Hello, all, and welcome to a new episode of Sustainability Forward, our podcast on all the important topics covering the major topic of sustainability. My name is Rishi. I'm your host, and my co-host, as always, Carmine, is also with me. Carmine, welcome.
Thank you, Rishi. Welcome to this exciting episode.
Yes, and one that probably is motivated, Carmine, by your personal experience, which is the experience of switching from a gas boiler to a heat pump. Is that correct? I understand you've got a new heat pump installed recently.
Yes, so I electrified my current heating at home. Yes, residential heating, with this kind of experience.
Excellent. I have been sort of thinking about heat pumps as an area of curiosity, more as a topic for the industry than looking at it from a personal perspective. But so I'm very curious to learn about how you arrived at the decision, what kind of calculations you did to get there. But before that, I mean, you're in a fairly cold place, as I guess we all are in Europe, going through a pretty cold environment right now. But in your case, Carmine, does it in sort of a cold environment like where you are, does it really work, the heat pumps?
Yes, so by the way, great opportunity to talk about a personal experience here. And yes, so I live in close to the Alps, where a temperature can drop really significantly. And while there are a lot of common misconception about the heat pump, there is one that they don't work really well in cold regions. So I can confirm actually that the one I installed works perfectly, even in winter. And this really depends on the kind of heat pump installed. We'll talk later about some of the technicality about it, but it's all about efficiency, even in freezing conditions.
Interesting. And so that's a very important consideration. Let's maybe come to the question of the energy costs, right? You must have done,
Yeah.
as an engineer, you must have done some
Yes.
calculations to arrive at the decision, right? Walk us through it.
Yeah. So I wear back my thermodynamic hat for a second, looking at a combustion versus an electrification of heating. So when I look at my old gas boiler, it was 20 years old, more or less, and my energy bill of gas, it was consuming more or less 22,000 kilowatt hour of gas per year. And this was costing me around 2,500 euro per year. Now, it's combustion. So let's apply an efficiency of 80% of this gas boiler. So really, out of this 22,000, I consume really for heating 17,000, more or less, 17,000 kilowatt hours that was actually used. Now, the heat pump provides the same heating, but consumes more or less 1/3 less of electricity. This is because he has what is called SCOP, or a seasonal coefficient of performance, around 3.5, more or less. So we need to compare the 5,000 kilowatt hours of heat pump versus what was needed with the gas boiler, the number I told you before. Now, in France, where I live, the cost for kilowatt hours is 25 cents, more or less. So my annual heating cost is 1,000 euro. So compared to what I was paying with the gas boiler, it's more or less 50% less. So this is, let me say, an OPEX cost that has been halved, going from heating to electrification of my residential home.
So the main driver here is the seasonal coefficient of performance. Is that the thing driving it?
Yeah, basically it's telling you that basically how the heat pump works. They use also the heating, even a low temperature is outside, and bring it home. So as an efficiency even higher than 100% because of that mechanism. That's why they name heat pump. So taking heat at low temperature in external condition and bringing in higher temperature inside.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So over the year, you actually win because it's basically doing it throughout the year in that manner.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I would say cost is 50% down.
Cost is 50%. Yeah, correct. That's very interesting. How about the climate impact? Because
Yes,
I guess to the uninformed person, it actually comes across as a very climate-friendly option. What's your calculation on that?
and actually that was also my other motivation, right? And it fits with this podcast. So electrified heating means that I really cut the CO2 emissions before it was coming from gas, and now completely electrified. Now, the gas boiler was consuming more or less 4,000 kilograms of CO2 per year. Now, the heat pump, that is just based on electricity, is more or less 20 times less. This is because of the France electricity mix, or what at least my provider is giving to me. That is mostly based on nuclear energy, hydro, renewable energy. There is a very little percentage coming from gas and coal. So, and let's say what I estimated is around more or less 200 kilograms per CO2 per year of current emission. So, in other terms, this will be the equivalent of avoiding the emission of a car driving 27,000 kilometers per year. That is actually what I drive every year because I'm living in the countryside. So it feels good to say, okay, if I owned another car, I will not use it. I'm avoiding that amount of emission per year.
Wow! So if you bought an electric car, it'd be you're getting close to negative territory then.
So that's probably would be the other electrification that I will think.
Okay. Okay. So what did you invest? If you're comfortable sharing that, what kind of cost and payback are you expecting to get out of this?
So it's also interesting what's happening there because of course there are some entry costs, but we could be a capex, right? Because you need to the heat pump is significant upfront investment. But
yeah,
it was interesting to do some math there because where I live in France, there are some subsidies or cash incentives that you take right away, depending on multiple conditions. So in my case, for example, let's assume that a heat pump is more or less around 20,000 euros, more or less, between the installation, all the material, etc. You can get 1/4 of it, around 3,000-4,000, depending on the condition of subsidies. And the remaining part, what's interesting, so you can get what they call zero interest loan, so that you can pay back to your bank in 5, 10, 15 years. So when I did all this on my case, basically after the 5 years, I'm basically repaid back what I needed, and then I will save the amount I was telling you before, so the 1,000 a year compared to the gas pump.
Wow, significant savings.
Yeah,
significant savings. Well, that's that's great. Learning from your personal experience about installation of heat pumps and in general the electrification of heating. I think that's a trend, and for that I think we have an expert with us who can help us learn more about what's happening in this part of the industry. So would you please, Carmine, welcome our guest for this podcast episode?
Sure, and actually that was the idea, to zoom out a little bit from this experience, having a broader discussion, and we invited a friend, Sylvain Cognard, that started his career in the newspaper business, and then he moved to Meier Tobler, where he's working now as a service manager in the heating business of the French part of Switzerland. Sylvain owns also an executive MBA from AMD. We are part of the AMD alumni, that's why we know each other, and I thought it was a great guest for this topic, let's say, in the heating electrification.
Absolutely.
So, Sylvain, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent. It's great to have you, Sylvain. Like you heard, Carmine has now a personal experience. It's an example for us to learn because he's kind of laid out the economics and how it works at an individual, sort of at a micro level. Let us start maybe by asking you the question, sort of the big picture question of this overall trend in the electrification of heat. We understand it is accelerating around the globe as part of sort of larger decarbonization efforts. What do you think are the key factors driving this transition, and where do you see the biggest opportunities and challenges in this area?
I can speak specific for Switzerland, but I think you have the same trends all around the world. For me, the key factor is the geopolitical context. We saw that when the war started in Ukraine, we see the demand on the market change immediately because the gas supply was difficult, and a lot of people have fear how can I do in the future to hit myself? So that's why we had a lot of demand at this part of time. Today it's more stable, I can say, but in Switzerland, but I think in many regions, specifically in Europe, you have this subsidized, these incentives from government to change, to be sure that the people are changing the heating system, because heating the building, it's a big part of CO2 emission in the world. That's why they are helping people to do this change. And you see on the market, there is another trend going at the same time with this electrification. It's the photovoltaic panels. You see more and more of this system. And of course, people generating electricity want to use it in their home and not spend it on the network. That's why with a heat pump, you can use it directly on site. I think that's the main things. You see the government policy on greenhouse gas regulation, incentives for sanitation, installation of photovoltaic. I think that are the key factors.
Excellent. One question I had on this was the heat pumps. Is this mainly for residential applications, or is there opportunities beyond that as well at a larger scale?
Heat pump exists since many years. If you have a fridge, it's an heat pump at basis, and you can have it for big buildings or small buildings. You can have it for many solutions, but to heat is very the trend today, and we have more and more solution and supplier in this area.
So we talk about, it's interesting, Sylvain. So we talk about eating. So you said people get worried about being warm. But I think there is also on the opposite side, given we are gaining in Europe more or less 3 degrees now on, it's because climate change is heating out on this part of the world. I think soon we'll be worried about cooling down our temperature, because we'll have the problem of how to manage all these buildings in summer, actually. And
yes.
And I heard something interesting that while in some countries in the world you have, by right, when you rent your apartment out to people, you need to ensure them you have a heating system. Most likely there will be now introduced by law the fact that you need to have a cooling system that is necessary to rent it out. So it would be something that would be a request.
It's exactly the same process at a heating pump. You can have a heat pump to do heat or to cool down. You can use it. We have some installation here in Switzerland. People want to have heat during winter and to refresh the house during summer. There is some model and some technology today. You can reverse the function of your heat pump. That's very cool, but you have to think at the beginning of this option because it requires some technical adjustment of the system.
Okay, let's talk a little bit then on this, on the customer behavior, because that either will require a technology shift, an adoption curve. So how do you see this getting traction? And what are the hurdles in the adoption from technical, economic, customer behaviors? What are the challenges that you see in scaling up these technologies?
I think the first challenge is to sanitation. We have a lot of buildings with fossil heating system. They want to move to this heat pump. The difficulty is you don't work in the same technology. You need something different. For your example, Carmine, you have radiator at home. They were used with your old fossil system, and the temperature of the water in the radiator was approximately, I think, 60, 70 degrees. But if you go to a heat pump system, the temperature, we have some models that can reach this kind of temperature, but the majority of heat pump are working between 50, 60 degrees. That's why with old radiators, it's difficult sometimes to heat the house. That's the main difficulty. It's to completely sometimes redesign the whole heating system of a house. And we have some customers, they're very surprised because when the heat pump starts, they don't see the heat immediately because it takes time. It takes time to warm up all the system. With fossil fuel, you have instant energy. It's not the case with heat pump. You have some inertia and you have to wait. And that's one thing. If you want to change in your home, you have to do calculation just as you did, but you have to sometimes redesign the whole system, whole heating system. That's why it's very important to work with professional because that's the trend of the market. We have some people in the past installing fossil heating system, but if you go to install a heat pump, it's not the same technology. You need different skills. You need more skills in the gas system, in the electrical system, and sometimes could be difficult.
Got it. So what you're saying is you need to have an holistic view on the ecosystem where you're applying this kind of new technology. That requires
Exactly.
also some customer adoption in the way they are using it.
Mm-hmm. But as you did, sometimes people think, yeah, I go to heating system, don't need maintenance anymore, and will cost the cost will be reduced. But at the end, you have to do a good calculation because, as you mentioned, this CUP coefficient of performance is not fixed. Depending on the temperature outside, it's depending on the machines, depending on the context, and sometimes you can have surprise and say, hey, at the end, it's not the right calculation. That's why for every project you need a global approach. What is your building? What is your expenses? How many kilowatt hours you need? And to have experts coming to your home and say, okay, first is what are the heat losses in your home? Sometimes it's better to have a better insulation in your home than to change the heat system. That's why I think you need this global approach. And people think you have it's just plug and play. No, it's more difficult than this.
Now, you started sort of mentioning, what could be some of the challenges directly from the consumer side. What kind of concerns do you typically hear? Is it sort of lack of knowledge? Is it lack of knowledge of the technical or the economic side? Uh, and maybe also at a sort of on a commercial scale, do you see any concerns from potential buyers of heat pumps? What kind of concerns do you typically come across in the market?
The first thing, if you go with this kind of project of sanitation, of to create a new house with a heat pump, it's the price. As Carmine mentioned before, it's not the same range of price. It costs more, and that's why you need to take that in account because the return of investment it's of course longer. It's a big amount of money, and that's always the first question with our customer is what is the cost, the final cost at the end. That's why if you have this kind of machine, you have to take care of it because if you don't do the necessary maintenance every year or every 2 years, and something broke in this machine, it's more expensive than a fossil old system. And that's why we need to discuss always with customer, then think it's just plug and play. It's okay. No, it's more difficult than that.
Now, let's go on more into detail of your experience. So you work in Switzerland for Meier Tobler, company that is positioning this energy transition. How do you see the company playing in accelerating this electrification of heating, specifically in the Swiss market?
I think our role, Meier Tobler in Switzerland, we provide. We are not manufacturer of heat pump. We are distributing heat pump. That's why we need to have a good portfolio. We choose what kind of machine we want to have for our customers. The main customer of Meier Tobler, they are installer, people that building all the system. And at the end, the end customer dealing direct with my department, the service. And we are providing good machine and a good expertise. You need to train a lot of people. We have a whole department just to train our people. We have a laboratory to test and to train the people on the machine to be sure we are experts. We don't want to have an installation not running well. That's why our role at Meier Tobler is to provide the best technician and the best technical solution. We have engineer experts that help on the market to design, to do the plans of all the installation. And this expertise is very crucial for us. What is important for us is we are preparing the future. We are preparing ourselves because regulation are changing. I mean, if you have some old heat pump and you with some specific gas in it, maybe this gas will not be allowed in the next few years. That's why the provider, the manufacturer are changing for this new, what can I say, soft gas like propane, for example.
Yes.
And that's why we are preparing that. It means we are adjusting our training for technicians, adjusting the plan and the specification. We have a lot of discussion with professionals on the market to explain this trend. And we don't want to be at the end of the trend. We want to be front and to say what is coming in the next year and to prepare ourselves, the company, and the customer to these changes.
Excellent. Sylvain, one question maybe as we get to the close of this episode is, you have sort of taken this personal journey to go from, traditional to, let's say, electric heating, and you've worked in the building services industry. How has your perspective on heating technology evolved over these years, and how do you see that going forward?
The trend is good, I think, when we see this change, but we sometimes underestimate the challenge because it's completely a new technology. It don't require the same skills. You have to think differently. But if you are well prepared, you can do fantastic installation. I have a lot of examples in Switzerland with fantastic installation for a customer. They want to eat everything. And interesting is this trend is coming now with digitalization. Because if you have a heat pump, you can see online what's happened on your heat pump, and you can optimize it. If you are solar photovoltaic system, you can optimize the use of your own electricity. You can store some energy in battery for photovoltaic, but in water, you can store the heating in a boiler to be sure you have enough for the consumption of the next days. A very interesting example in Switzerland, I know there is a company that built a complete building. In the center of the building, it's a big tank with water. They are heating it during summer and using it during winter. They don't need a heating system. They just use the solar energy, store it in summer, and use it in winter.
Yes.
And I think the trend on the market going in this direction, digitalization, storage of energy, that's the main challenge in the future. But I think it's a good opportunity for everyone. And you see, of course, it's reducing the CO2 emission. And that's the main challenge for next generation.
For our generation. Yes,
Yeah, already.
I'm completely with you. Thank you, Sylvain. That's been a really great conversation. So I started from my little example, but we understood today how it is complex. It is complex because it's a technology change. It requires some customer, let's say, awareness about this kind of technology. What does it take to get to really good installations in a context that keeps changing? You mentioned regulation, for example, that then changed country to country, the level of subsidies, and what it really takes to have a good outcome out of it. A good outcome that is a customer experience, so get what they need in terms of heating or in terms of cooling, value for the money, and CO2 emissions. So these are probably the takeaway of this, and not seeing the technology per se in a pocket, but in a broader ecosystem where it should be applied. So Sylvain, thank you for coming to the show. That's been a pleasure to having this chat, and we'll learn something new today.
I hope so. Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you, Sylvain. For our audience, make sure to find us on our different podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We will welcome any comments and feedback that you have on this or other episodes on our LinkedIn page under the banner Sustainability Forward, the podcast. And we would be looking also for ideas on what kind of content you would want to listen to in the upcoming episodes. Of course, we have a very good agenda through the year, but getting the feedback from you, your engagement on our LinkedIn page and our other platforms will keep us motivated to keep going. That's all for today on this episode. This is me, your host, Rishi, signing off along with my co-host, Carmine. Thank you.